Yes, believe it or not, I am actually going to finish the Philco 15DX. Or at least I hope I am. Fingers crossed. Now, you may recall that I left off with being very frustrated by the speaker situation. The original speakers that came with it were really rusty, and the cones were a mess, and they were so rusty that the voice coils were rubbing. Well, here's one of them, and I did take it apart. I did more or less strip the rust off and painted them up and patched up the cones. And they're okay. I mean, it's not rubbing now. There is a little bit of corrosion that's kind of come back down in there. But they probably work all right. But the other issue is the output transformer, which is also a rusty mess. I kind of took it apart and tried to get the rust off the core, but it's pretty hard to do. In hindsight, what I should have done is just taken it all apart. I think it's Arthur Hollingsworth. Hope I got your name right. I saw him do a video recently where he took the core all apart. I didn't really know that was something you could feasibly do, but I could. I guess once you get one or two of these out, that's probably the tough part, and then the rest will just kind of all fall apart. So these are all individual sheets of steel, mushed together. So I could do that. I'm not. I kind of prefer not to, but if I had to, I could. The other issue is that the frame is really rusty. It's almost fallen apart on this corner. So I've been looking around to salvage one from something else, and I have yet to find one that's the right size. So that's where that stands. And then I bought a second pair of speakers ages ago that are kind of cheaper. They're not original Philco, so they are the identical size. And those are the ones I use for my power-up tests. And those sound like crap. Those are also rubbing, I believe. So anyways, cut to the chase. Some point last year, somebody was selling a pair of Philco 15 speakers on eBay. And I just couldn't resist buying them, because they look to be in great condition. The cones are fully intact. Minor amount of corrosion here and there, but otherwise they look fine. And he did a good job of packing because he left them attached to this board, so there's no chance of the cones getting damaged. So this speaker down here, it's the same as this. One slight problem though. I did a quick resistance check on the output transformer here, and I believe it's open on one of the sections. Really uses push-pull outputs, and I believe one side on the of the center tap it was open. But that's what I want to do in this video. I want to examine these more closely. Something else I've always been curious about is what's up with this. I had this on another set of speakers as well. This type of connector on the end. And I'm like, well, okay. I have a Philco 15, and this doesn't plug into anything. There's no socket for this on the radio chassis, but this came from a Philco 15, so. Well, I found out on the Philco forum that the later revisions of the Philco 15 chassis did have a socket and plug for the speakers, whereas I had the earlier version where it's hardwired. I kind of wish I had the later version, because this makes it a whole lot easier. Mine being hardwired, you have to either unsolder the wires from the speaker, or you got to take the speaker out with the chassis every time you want to work on it, which is not so convenient. Theoretically, I suppose I could find the matching socket, cut a hole in my chassis, mount it, and plug this in, but I don't want to do that. But what it means is if I do use these speakers, I'm going to take this off. And hopefully these wires are long enough that I can thread them into the chassis. Otherwise, I'll have to replace the wires and extensions onto them. Alright, so I'm going to get these out of the box and check that more closely. If it is bad, again, I could try to salvage this one, and it just occurred to me I could use the frame from this one. So I could take this all apart and get all the rust off these, put it all back together, and use the frame from that. Or try to fix this one. If both of those fail catastrophically, the final option is my other set of speakers. I could drill out the rivets on this and on that one and transfer that transformer to this. Even though it's not a Philco output transformer, it's probably close enough that it would work. If that fails, I can buy a new one from Hammond, I guess, makes them. It'll cost me like $50 or so. And I'm not 100% sure it would be the exact impedance, but should be close enough that it would work all right. Okay, here's a speaker out of the box. So, I'll show you guys the cones before I test anything. Look at that. Fine condition. About as good as you're ever going to find for a radio from 1932. I took some reference photos, then carefully unsoldered all the wires, undid the screws, and pulled the smaller speaker out, put it away, out of harm's way, and I then took a drill and drilled out the rivets carefully, and didn't gouge anything up or damage anything, and pulled the transformer out. So here is the source of my problems. Looks like it's a 5276, so hey, if anybody's got one rattling around the junk box, let me know. Otherwise, I think the simplest course of action is to take the Wheeler speakers, the ones I used when I powered this chassis up on my workbench, take the transformer out of that one and transplant it. Those are currently mounted back in the cabinet, so I'll have to make some room, turn the cabinet around, get the speakers out, and hopefully it's the same hole spacing. If it's not, I might just temporarily just put it down somewhere, maybe solder some longer wires on, just to make sure that everything will work okay. I imagine it will, unless maybe the voice coils in those are very different impedance or something. Anyways, assuming it does work, or I find a transformer that will work, I have to mount it back on here somehow. So one option would be, to mount it. Not that this is the board that goes with mine. Mine has a similar board in it. I could mount it like to the wood or something. Or I can reattach it to this with some screws. Now, the one up top, I can get my finger around to feed a screw through and hold it stationary while I tighten it up from the other side. One down here, not so much. However, I know from working on another speaker of the same type that if I take it off this board and you take off all these little screws around the perimeter, the cone just comes right out. It is not glued down. And I've already got the voice coil wires taken off. So I'm going to do that anyways because I want to clean up a bit of corrosion here and there. So I want to take this speaker out. But first thing I want to do is check that other output transformer. Well, I changed my mind about the output transformer. I am just going to leave that set of Wheeler speakers alone rather than drill out the rivets on it. What I am going to do instead is try out this, which is a modern Hammond output transformer, which I'd been considering doing for a while anyways, and when I checked the dimensions on this particular one and saw that it should fit on here perfectly, I decided to go for it. Partly I want to see if it'll work, because that'd be cool if instead of having to scavenge or try to spend all those hours trying to take the transformer apart and repair it and put it back together, you just buy one off the shelf, it'll work fine. I also suspect these have a better frequency response than the original. One thing I'm not 100% certain of is the wattage rating of the original. Now it's push-pull 42s. And I did look up the typical wattage those put out. And this should be alright. This is a 10 watt transformer. I've also heard that Hammond is fairly conservative with their wattage ratings. They do have a bigger, they do have a 15, which I considered, but the 15 wouldn't fit on here. I would have to enlarge one of these holes. And see how this one's got a little bit of play. So you got a little bit of leeway, but even with that, it's not big enough to handle the larger Hammond one. Now I figure, hey, if this burns out, then I can go with the larger Hammond and drill this out a little bit bigger, or go with the one out of the Wheeler. So here it is. This is what they call a universal output transformer. So here's your primary, your 3-wire center tap, and then either side. And then there's a bunch of taps for the secondary. You can see here it's a secondary 1.5 to 15 ohm. And then frequency response is 100 hertz to 30 kilohertz. And the primary 1200 to 25,000. Depending on how you hook up the output, you can get different input and output impedances. Now, I had posted about this on the Philco forum, and Ron Ramirez looked up the specs on the original output transformer, which I believe he said was 1.5 out and 16,000 in, or something to that effect. This can come almost exactly to that with the right combination of connections. So that is what I'm going to try. And this should mount. Yep. Will mount just like that right into the existing holes. Now the only downside, well, assuming it works, is that the original had some extra mounting terminals. Had plates something like this on it. Some of them were not tied to the transformer. They were used for tie points for the field coil. This doesn't have that. I suppose they could have put some here, but they chose not to. So I am lacking tie points for these wires, the field coil wires. So I'll have to come up with something for that. But anyways, the first thing I want to do is just find out, does this even work? So I will take the speaker out, take all the screws out, take the cone out, mount this, and then just kind of tack things together. I'll leave the field coils maybe floating in space, wrap some electrical tape so they don't short. Just want to get this kind of jury-rigged up so that I can just see if it works. If it sounds great, as I hope it does, then I will more securely mount things. Oh, I should have mentioned the exact transformer I use. This is a model 125D. I believe the 125E is the larger size, and of course they have smaller ones. I should also mention where I got this from. Several places sell it. Antique Electronics Supply, I believe Angela Instruments, and a few other places. Where I actually got this from was Mouser Electronics. I did not realize they carried Hammond transformers. They only had 2 in stock, and now they only have 1. But their price was reasonable compared to the other vendors, so I figured why not. Plus I was able to order up some other stuff, which is capacitors for that Admiral remote control portable TV I picked up not too long ago. So that's that. I got the electrolytics and my skinny ones for restuffing, and it uses a lot of 1000 and 1600 volt film caps, so I had to order up some of these high voltage guys. Can't say when I'll get to it, but at least I've got the parts on hand for it. Here's the chassis back up on the workbench, and I've got a bit of work to do before I can try out the speakers. When I last left off, I was in the process of cleaning up the chassis, so I actually removed the entire ganged tuning capacitor, and I took off the output transformer so I could paint it. Got that remounted, cleaned up the screws, cleaned up this a bit, also took the shadow meter off. I got the 2 mounting screws now soaking in some evapor rust because they were very corroded. And when I took this off, I had to disconnect the wires. These go to the light bulb on the back of the shadow meter, and these 2 wires go to the dial lamp inside here, so I got to wire those back up. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 connections I have to reestablish down here, plus I think there's a grounding lug. And I need to reattach a power cord, and then hook up the speaker cable, and then and only then can I try powering this back up. And I had mentioned earlier about how this is a universal transformer, you can hook it up various ways. There's a chart on the box. So these are all the combinations of output impedances or primary impedance and secondary impedances that you can do with these transformers. It's a pretty wide range. So I think the most appropriate for me is this guy right here. 16,500 for the primary and 1.5 ohm for the secondary. Okay, I think I got it all back correctly. Now, in addition to taking that tuning cap out for cleaning, I also took it out so I could install new rubber mounts. Let's see, here's the ground connection, and 1, 2, 3, 4 for each of the capacitor sections. Got the power cord back on. Got that audio transformer reconnected. Got the shadow meter reconnected. And I think that'll do it. Now, I haven't hooked up the speaker yet, nor do I have any tubes in it. What I want to do now is power it up just to make sure the pilot lights come on, that I didn't make some tragic mistake. So this light bulb should come on and the one inside here. And then I've got a little update about the tube situation. Okay, let's see how this goes. There's also another bulb that can go under here to illuminate the speaker box, but it sticks down and it would bash into my workbench, so I have it out right now. So I'll turn off the overhead lights. They're a little overwhelming. Let's see. This is power. Cool. Sort of. That's on, but why isn't this on? Oh, there we go. Because the bulb's not screwed in all the way. Alright, so. Excellent. Now, I'd mentioned tubes. So obviously I need to repopulate the tube sockets. So when I got this radio, it still had a fair number of the original globe type Philco tubes. By that I mean Philco on the base, a little Philco label, some of them are a bit deteriorated, and a number. This one's really hard to see. Let me grab a different one. There we go. So Philco, and a 37. Now, back when I got this 5-6 years ago, globe tubes commanded a premium, and they pretty much always have, but they weren't insane. You could still get them, so maybe an ST type 37 with any generic brand, like a tongue sole or something. I don't know, $2-3 used. A globe, I don't know, $5 to $10. Now things have gotten insane. In terms of globes, and especially if you want branded, or even more specifically like a Philco type 37 or a type 42 or a type 80. So this came with some 37s. I don't know if I had a full set. I think it uses two or three of them. 1, 2, 3, maybe there's a fourth in here. And some of them were weak, and I dug up some STs, and I had I had some issues. So if you go back and watch when I got this thing playing, it played okay, but I wasn't happy with the 37 performance. So I started an odyssey to find some more good Philco Globe, just like this 37s. It took me years. Just ridiculous. I would go to an antique radio swap fest. It was giving me a blank look, like they didn't even know what I was talking about. Finally, few weeks ago, maybe months ago now, somebody was selling 3 of them, untested, on eBay, along with an ST Type 26 that wasn't a Philco branded tube. I think I paid $40, something like that. Buy it now, plus shipping, and I was happy. And they all test like new. So, the 37 situation has been taken care of, and they're in excellent condition. Both the base, the label there, the number, all very distinct. So I have got a full set of good Philco branded Globe, like would have come with this. I got 2 Globe 42s, I got a Globe Philco 80, I got a full set. However, to power it up right now, I'm going to use the whatever I've got handy because I kind of don't want to risk damaging the globes right now. So I'll start putting these back in if I can figure out how to put them in right. There we go. So I got to pop all those in and then hook up the speakers. Now I just had the output transformer tacked on there temporarily. Just one screw, but it's good enough. The speakers are vibrating a lot. It'll probably flop around a little bit. Hey, I just want to see if these work. So the voice coils connect in parallel. These two lugs to these two lugs, and then I tie them over to the 2 points I said that I would use before. Primary on this is just 3 wires, no lugs, which is kind of a drag. If they had mounting lugs, it'd make my task a lot easier. So I'm going to have these wires flopping around, connected to these wires flopping around, connected to this field coil wires flopping around. So I'll just splice them all together, wrap some electrical tape around it just to try this out. Assuming everything works great and it sounds phenomenal, I will go ahead and do what I said earlier and take the cone out of this, mount this more securely, figure out where to put a terminal strip, get everything secure. And I got to take it off this board. This board will not go into my radio. This is the board from whatever radio this came out of. I think it was just a plain old Philco 15X. The DX also has a board, but it's different, so I got to take the board out of mine and transplant the speakers onto it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So now I got to figure out how to get all this hooked up correctly, and I don't dare make a mistake. That'd be very bad. Luckily, the original wiring is still fairly legible. So I think that's white, that's green, that's blue and white, that's green and white, and that is blue. So assuming that's right, everything should be hooked up okay. I've already double checked a few of these. For example, blue ground, I definitely have continuity from here to the chassis, so I think I'm good. I'm going to double check that a little bit more, and then I'm going to wrap it off with electrical tape and then power this thing up. In case you were wondering, one thing I can check fairly readily is the output transformer that goes to the plates on the 42s. So white and green. Got my ohmmeter clip on white. Go to one of the 42 sockets. Got continuity. Now if I go to the same pin on the other 42 socket, got the resistance of the primary winding. That's good. 288 ohms through there. And if I go over to the other side, here's this guy. There we go. Alright, I think we are good to go. Drop this down to 115 or so. Pile of lights on. 2 filaments lighting up. Oh, might have put the 42 tubes back in their sockets. Hey, that was a useful test anyways, because the other tubes lit up, the Yeti rectifier wasn't the red plating or arcing over or anything. Alright, let's try that again. This volume, get that down fairly low, tone and tuning. That's not a good sign. Yeah, there's nothing whatsoever out of the speakers. Crap. Well, I guess now the troubleshooting will begin. Now, because I changed a bunch of stuff, could be a lot of things. It could be the way the speakers are hooked up, but it could also be some of the other stuff. I might not have wired this back in correctly, or probably nothing to do with a tuning cap, because I think you start a crackle or something. So it seems like something's not right. Oh, hey, wait a minute. Forgot another tube hiding under that shield. Hang on. I think that's the first audio amp, and then that's the phase inverter. So having that out of the circuit would definitely cut the path to the audio going to the speakers. That sounds more promising. Oh, yes. Yeah. It's like booming audio, but at least I hear something out of the speakers. Why no reception? I don't have much of an antenna, but I think I would be able to pick up strong local stations. Try hooking up a longer antenna, see if it makes a difference. Now, as memory serves, this is power and then local distance. I'm not sure which position is first. Probably local. So now I got more gain. It seems like I got more gain because I'm hearing more crackling coming through the speaker. No reception. Now this could be an issue with me not having this hooked back up right, or the local oscillator not running. So close. I'll try swapping out some of the tubes. I recall I did this first time around. I had some trouble with these 37s. I think that's the local oscillator or the mixer. So now that I think the radio's not going to go up in smoke, I don't mind putting in those new 37s I just picked up. Okay, I put in fresh 37s for the local oscillator, detector, and first audio amp, I believe. Crack it out of the speaker again. Nothing. Good distance. Some little crackle. Alright. Do some real basic troubleshooting here. In fact, I think I see a problem already. Don't look to me like that tube is glowing. No, it is not. Could it just be that simple? No, these are the same statue tubes I was using before. I don't recall any of them being bad, so maybe it's just dirty socket. Let's see if we can get that filament to glow. Sometimes with these tubes it's really hard to see the filament because they're just not that bright, but this is the same type as these others, so Well, must be a bad connection underneath the socket, but I didn't touch the filament wiring, so that seems unlikely. Well, I think I got another 39/44. So I'll replace that tube and see if it makes a difference. I thought I had turned it off. This thing throws you off because it has 2 on positions and 1 off. So I was pulling this cap off and thought the radio was turned off, but no, it was not. There we go. Did I say plate cap a moment ago? If I did, I meant grid cap. So what I was about to do before I noticed the tube filament was off was to start touching these grid caps, and that's a simple test. If you hear a loud buzz, that means you're good up to that stage and you work your way back towards the front end. Alright, that tube is definitely lit up. Might get some feedback with the tube shields out of place, but it's still my concerns right now. Yeah. That got it. Put the shield back on. Good, so now I was about to call it quits for tonight and pick up on the next video. I'm glad, little microphonic there. That's why they phased out those globe types in favor of the ST, so they could put that mica plate in there to keep the tube elements stable. Alright, let's see what she can do now. Go into distance mode. Oh yeah.
That part that can.
Shadow meter's working too.
The courts are not involved.
Not that it wasn't before, but it's good to see that it's still working.
Committee members who are upset, right? At Wrigley Park. I'm in York every day from 10 to 2. ESPN 1.
I'll have to fire up my local transmitter to get some music probably. There's Radio Disney. It's kind of a weak station.
Drags a seat 5 times its own size.
There's some music. Try the tone control now. Oh, we got 3 positions. Or no, 4 positions. I know my neighbors are home, but I'm going to have to see how loud this can be, so I'm going to flip these speakers so the cones are facing outwards and then crank it up briefly. So, it must have AVC, because when I go from local to distance... Oh, never mind. Must be a dirty switch. Alright, well that's with the volume all the way down and I can still hear it, so I got a feeling this is going to be really, really loud. Yeah, I didn't even actually make it up all the way because it was getting so distorted. There's just no reason to go that loud. So that is worlds better than that crappy pair of Wheeler speakers I was using earlier. Not that there's anything wrong with the speakers themselves. In fact, they look to be identical construction to these Philcos, but the cones were not in good condition. If you recall, the spiders were kind of damaged and they just didn't have much travel. Yeah, these sound great. This is my transmitter. This should be public domain music, so YouTube shouldn't complain. One thing this radio could use is a bit of a reduction drive on it. It's kind of hard to tune stations in. Of course, you got the shadow meter to home too. The shadow meter's definitely working right. It sounds best when the rectangle is its narrowest. Don't think mine's working as optimally as it could be. I think that shadow should be more pronounced, but given how much trouble other people have had having to go so far as to rewind them, I'm glad it's working at all, so I don't really want to mess with it. Alright, cool. So, I guess all the hard part is done. Now, it's just cosmetic, really. So I think the next thing I'll do is finally get around to restuffing these guys. I did a video, geez, probably 2 years ago now, maybe more, where I polished these up, and they've gotten a bit dull since. So I think after I restuff them, I'll polish them up again and put some gloss lacquer over them to keep the corrosion from coming back, and they will go in there and then replace this. The original would have had Mershons, which these aren't quite, but close enough, so they will look pretty in there. And let's see, I want to put a vintagey looking power cord on it, and I've already talked enough about transferring speakers into it. And then do an alignment. I got some of this fancy new equipment now. I might as well do an alignment. I think I did do an alignment earlier with some of my older equipment, but I don't mind doing it again. So I think that will be it for this video. Oh, actually there is one more thing I want to do. Not in this video, but in the future. So, what should I do with... there's those microphones. What should I do with that and that? So, this is the rusted out one. Frame fell apart with some rusty plates still in there. They bulged out, so the frame wouldn't really fit back on there right anyways. But, electrically, it's still good. This one, frame is fine, core is fine, transformer's bad. Figure I got nothing to lose. Assuming I can find the free time, I might as well try to pop this apart and this apart and transfer this onto this. And then maybe pop it on the speakers, maybe do a little sound comparison, or at least just keep it handy for a spare in case I ever need it. Seems a shame just to throw them away.